of the Marcus Mosher official game day mock draft. We tried to name it last week. It did not go particularly well, so we won't try to do that again. Let's recap where we are. We did the first 10 picks. You had Jacksonville taking Trevor Lawrence, my New York Jets taking Zach Wilson. So quarterback, no surprise. San Francisco, this is a quarterback, but a bit of a surprise. So Trey Lance, decent value in those betting markets right there, right now, if you want to back Marcus. Atlanta, Kyle Pitts. Cincinnati, Penei Sewell. Miami, Devonta Smith. So if you're wondering which Alabama wide receiver is going to come off the board, there's a prop bet right now where you can bet that. Pretty much a coin flip between Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle. You've got Devonta Smith. Detroit, Jamar Chase. And should say there's another prop bet out there where Jamar Chase, a big favorite to be the first wide receiver selected. So again, another interesting potential prop there. Carolina, Justin Fields. So they go out and get another quarterback. Denver, Mike Parsons from Penn State. Not getting nearly enough love. We talked about that last week, Marcus. And Dallas, Patrick Surtain. So before we move on to number 11, there, we're asking you to do something a little difficult, which is come up with a mock draft that we're revealing week over week. And we know how fluid this situation is. Is there any component of this draft that you feel better about, that you feel maybe not as good about, like over the course of time as things evolve?
No, I feel pretty good about my first 4 picks. I really believe, Adam, the entire draft hinges not on pick 3 or 4, but actually pick 5 with the Bengals, because I could see them going with either Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. And depending on what they do there is going to have some pretty major ripple effects between picks 6 through 9. So that's really the keystone of this draft. I went with Sewell here. As we get closer, I'm starting to think it might be Chase, but I'm fine leaving it as is.
I did a video for the game day on kind of the first non-quarterback taken, and I really struggled between Pitts and Chase. Sewell, I mean, they're very close odd-wise. It's very, very interesting, and you've got team needs there. Whether it's a trade, it could go all over the board. So I think it's fascinating to see, with Cincinnati, how much influence is Joe Burrow going to have? Is he going to want his former teammate? There's a lot of intrigue between that 4 and really 4 and 8. I think that you're right. It's going to chain reaction for the entire draft. But let's move forward here. The New York Giants, at the moment, we have them not trading out. We've got them selecting at number 11. Marcus, who's the pick for you?
Yeah, in the history of the time, Dave Gettleman has been a GM with either the Giants or the Panthers. He's never traded back in a draft. I don't expect that to happen here either. They want to continue to build up their trenches. Rashawn Slater might be the best offensive lineman in this class. He can play guard. He can play tackle. I think they're going to view him as a Zach Martin level of player. We know Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator there. I love the fit of Slater to the Giants.
Does this speak volumes at all, Marcus, about what they think of Andrew Thomas, who was really bad to start the year and then looked to be getting better? I'm curious. I don't want to go into like a deep dive, but they invested significant equity in that position last year, and I think the results were mixed. So are they trying to kind of make up for that, or is this just a player that's really good that's kind of falling into their lap?
Yeah, I don't think they're panicking about Andrew Thomas. They also drafted Matthew Parrott in the 3rd round last year, and he projects as maybe the future right tackle. Nate Solder is coming back, so they're deep at tackle. But I think you just take Slater. You know that he can be a Pro Bowl level guard. And if something were to happen to Andrew Thomas or to Parrott, you can slide Slater out to tackle. I just think this is a case as he's the best player available. He helps protect Daniel Jones, and that's just what they need to do this offseason.
Any chance at wide receiver here to tie a bow on this thing?
I think if Devonta Smith is there, that's probably the guy that they want to go get. But since he has gone to the Dolphins in this mock, I don't think they're going to go with Waddle here.
Okay. All right. We'll move from one NFC East team to another. The team of the week, the Philadelphia Eagles, picking at number 12. We don't know who the starting quarterback will be. It's been kind of a weird, frankly, some odd draft decisions, I'd say, Marcus. That's putting it mildly, I think, for the Eagles over the last couple of seasons. Who do you have with them taking at number 12?
Yeah, actually, the next 2 picks we're going to talk about, I debated putting Jalen Waddle, the speedster from Alabama here, but ultimately I went with J.C. Horn, a very physical, athletic cornerback that you could pair with Darius Slay. That defense needs a ton of work. There's just not many blue chippers on that team. outside of Fletcher Cox, who's getting older, and Darius Slay. Horn is a week 1 starter that gives him some attitude and aggressiveness on the back end.
Okay, so interesting here. I know you've done extensive evaluation for the Cowboys. You had Pickens, Surtain, and I think we talked about this. Horn, his pro day, everybody's pro day has been juiced up this year, of course, but was phenomenal. So how close? And I think we may even talked about this last week, but this is it feels like a pretty good selection because it feels like the gap between that number 1 and number 2 corner is pretty small at this point.
Yeah, I think Surtain's probably the safer player, 3-year starter at Alabama. I think Horn maybe has the more upside because he's just more athletic and you just can't teach that kind of aggression at corner. And frankly, Adam, if we were doing this mock again and I could kind of rewrite it, I think I might put JC Horn at number 10 and have Surtain going to the Eagles here. I'm just starting to hear some whispers that the Cowboys might prefer Horn, especially Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator. But you can make a great case for either of these guys, both quality corners. And I think any team inside the top 12 would be happy to get them.
You know what I love around draft time? Whispers, murmurs,
Whispers.
Well,
here's the thing, Adams. You start to get these coaches involved into the draft process, right? And some teams lean on their coaches more than others. And the Dallas Cowboys are a team where, hey, if a coach likes a player, they're willing to throw out the scouting staff. They don't care about those guys. If a coach likes a player, they'll move them up the board and they'll draft them.
God bless loose lips and whispers. More of those to come. All right. Number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers. Really interesting team, of course. A ton of weapons. Justin Herbert looks like he's going to be an absolute star. Marcus, I've started getting back into like trading cards, like sports cards. The market for Justin Herbert right now is frankly
through the roof.
Insane. So number 13, I'm assuming you're going to have something that helps this young quarterback. Interesting to see what position. Who are you going with?
Yeah, again, I thought Jalen Waddle would be a potential option here as well. So if they don't go Waddle, which would be so much fun, giving Herbert like a legit 4-2 guy, please let that happen, football gods. But I went with Christian Darrisaw, a left tackle from Virginia Tech. Listen, the Chargers offensive line is bad, and they did a few things in the offseason to improve the interior of their offensive line. Tackle is still an issue. Would not be surprised, Adam, at all if they go up and be aggressive, grabbing a Penei Sewell to pair with Justin Herbert.
Wow.
But in this mock, they stay at 13. They pick Darrisaw, and he's the left tackle of the future.
So they invest in free agency. They invest in the draft. I mean, the strategy in your eyes is just keep them upright, but they are kind of in a unique position because they did invest in free agency that they're kind of probably an off the wall team that have a lot of flexibility to do different things. No, I mean, that feels like a team that can go in a lot of different places.
That's why I think if Waddle is available here, I think that would make a ton of sense. On that offense, you have a lot of talented players with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Jared Cook, but they don't have a ton of speed. Adding somebody like Waddle would get me really, really excited about that Chargers offense next season.
I love it. For you know who loved that more than we would is Waddle. Jalen Waddle would love that when you look at some of the teams around. All right, let's move to number 14. Another interesting team that, frankly, when we look at draft speculation, you don't hear a whole lot of, or I haven't heard a whole lot of, which is the Minnesota Vikings hit a home run with Justin Jefferson. It looks like on offense, have some really nice pieces, have the running game, but huge holes on defense. So where are you going here?
Yeah, I like Christian Barmore, defensive tackle from Alabama. They signed Dalvin Tomlinson, another Alabama defender this offseason, to be their one technique. They need somebody who can get up the field and create pressure. That is Christian Barmore. This might be a little bit high for him, but he's incredibly young, only 20 years old. He was a part-time player at Alabama. We have no idea what the ceiling is, but at 6'6", 310 pounds, and running a sub-4.9 40-yard dash, we know he's athletic. Minnesota loves to invest in defense. I think Christian Barmore would be a fantastic fit here.
I watched him a lot, obviously, with all the college that I did. I can tell you this, like the last third of the season, he was a real problem. And this was a D-line, not with the normal, like Alabama mainstay stars. I think by the end of it, he became that guy. Like he was, and Marcus, I'll ask you this. I've read a lot about this and heard a lot about this the last couple of weeks. just how little depth there is across in this defensive line class. So do you agree with that? And does the lack of depth at a position of great importance kind of force your hand into maybe moving up and grabbing a guy like this when you do?
Absolutely. We've seen over the last couple of years that even in good defensive tackles, these guys are getting defensive tackle classes that these guys are getting overdrafted. So I think Barmore, because he's so much better than everybody else, will probably go 5 to 10 spots too early. But I do think 15, 14 is kind of probably where he will land.
I love hearing this for a prop bet that I bet this week, and I'll tell you about that when we tackle our futures. Just saying, this is very good news for me, and this is potentially very good news for me as well. Number 15, New England. Probably we talk about intriguing spots in the draft because philosophically, what it means for a team that is sort of just in this odd purgatory of who they are and their future and everything else. So New England, what do you got going here?
I've got Mac Jones, and Adam, the reason is after pick number 3, which is the 49ers, I don't see a great landing spot for Mac Jones. Like, I think if he doesn't go 3, he is going to fall in this draft. And I could see a situation where the Patriots trade up a few spots to go get him. But in this one, I've got him falling to 15, and I don't feel like that's a big reach. I think that's where he probably should go. I don't think he is the same talented player as Justin Fields or Trey Lance. I don't think he's necessarily somebody who should ever go in the top 10. So picking him at 15, letting him sit behind Cam for a year, I think makes a ton of sense.
So if he doesn't go here, I feel like it's because we tied him to the number 3 spot for a long time, and now we're sort of untying him, but we're keeping him around there. And there's a possibility of the trade. And I just feel like the information the general draft fans have on him is so all over the place. If he doesn't go here, are you looking at a situation where all of a sudden we start to look like the Aaron Rodgers, like awkward home green screen shot types? Like, could that be the kind of night for Mac Jones? Because to me, this is a weird one. You're talking about 3 or down the list you go.
I think so. And I think the next landing spot is the Chicago Bears, but I don't love that fit either because you got to have a pretty strong arm to play in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's just one thing Mac Jones doesn't have. I think, listen, if we're being really off the wall, what about Miami at 18? You draft him and you let the 2 Alabama quarterbacks compete with one another. Wouldn't that be a lot of fun?
Content, yes. Tua, yes. Probably no. But
it will never happen. It'll never happen. But I think it'd be a lot of fun.
That is fantastic. I want that to happen just for the tweets alone.
It'd be so much fun.
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense. I mean, certainly for New England, not having to trade up to potentially get this. Again, I just think Mac Jones is a really interesting piece when you talk about this point of the draft, if he doesn't go at number 3. Arizona at 16, look, a team with a lot and a team with pretty high expectations, a young quarterback that should get better, good weapons around him, all sorts of interesting prospects in place. I still think Isaiah Simmons could be really, really good once he gets comfortable. So what say you, Marcus, when it comes to this pick?
Yeah, they need to address their defense. They lost Patrick Peterson this offseason. Go out and get a Patrick Peterson clone and Caleb Farley. If it wasn't for injuries, he would never be available at this spot. And in fact, if he didn't have this recent back surgery, I think he's probably the first defender off the board.
Wow.
Getting him at 16 is just a fantastic value. He might be your best defensive player or your best secondary player by 2022. Wow. I think this is kind of the floor for Caleb Farley.
So, well, that's interesting because they talk about spasms. They talk about surgery, a guy that, opted out, a guy with a wealth of gifts that look to be in that case. So getting back to it, if he is healthy, is that a guy that gets to the Cowboys? Like if you don't have okay. So no. It's hit him quite a bit. And yet your opinion is the talent is too great to wait for him to fall too far.
Yeah, I think if he's 100% healthy, he's in the same caliber prospect as Jeff Okudah, who we saw go 3 last year, Denzel Ward, who went 4 in the 2018 draft. He's in that level of player or that range of player. Getting him at 16 is a discount and a very good one for the Cardinals.
I love it. Yeah, he is a really great player. It is a bummer for him that you're worrying about as a person with back problems. I think our back problems are probably a little different Just saying. I feel for him and the financial component as well. Number 17, the Las Vegas Raiders. Marcus, I'm just going to say it. Who the hell knows what they're going to do? Like, I mean, this is a team that's drafted. Curious is the polite way to say it.
That's very nice.
That's
I would
okay.
say that's very bad is the way that I would describe
bad.
it. But
This is the Mayock Gruden regime. It's like the opposite of what like your buddy does in their fantasy for going for names. They'll just do whatever they want to do. So trying to handicap what this contingent is going to do is potentially difficult. Who do you have them taking?
They like big school players that play with a mean streak. Elijah Vera Tucker, I like a lot from USC. Played left tackle this year, left guard in 2019. My guess in the pros, he's going to be on the right side. I think he could fill their need at right tackle. If he doesn't work out there because of a lack of arm length, you kick him inside and you have a dominant guard. I think Elijah Vera Tucker is one of the best picks they can make, which inevitably means they won't make it.
Is there anyone else in the draft that you thought may be a fit here? Like, is there any other position or even from the offensive line class, which I'm sure we'll get to, like who else in your eyes could be a backup plan here, knowing that the Raiders are casting with a wide net to draft somebody?
They love Alabama players and they love guys that are mean. Alex Leatherwood, most of the time not being mocked in the first round, most of the time in the 40s or 50s. Would not shock me at all if they pick him at 17. He can play multiple positions. He was a 3-year starter at Alabama. Makes a ton of sense.
That's an interesting evaluation, by the way, with him. And it'll be interesting to see if and when we get to him in your mock draft, because you talk about high ceilings, but complicated evaluations. I could absolutely see him being the pick. All right, Miami Dolphins back at it again, number 18 overall. So with the first pick, you had them addressing the wide receiver position with Devonta Smith. So now they're back at it, number 18. More help for Tua. Are you going on a defensive side, which looks like it's blossoming and becoming one of the better defenses in the NFL? What do you have here?
Yeah, I think Miami is going to want to continue to upgrade their trenches. They drafted Austin Jackson in the first round last year, an athletic offensive tackle. Wouldn't be surprised if they do something similar this year. Samuel Cosme from Texas has maybe the best feet in this class, just an easy mover. Needs to add a little bit of strength, but I could easily see the Dolphins picking him, maybe even allowing him to sit for half the year to continue to gain a little bit of weight and strength. But I think this could potentially be their left tackle of the future.
I'm surprised we didn't hear more of him throughout this process. I know we've got a couple of elite offensive linemen at the top. When he came to Texas and started developing, it was a big deal for a Texas program that has been floundering. I'd say he probably met expectations, wasn't necessarily like considered one of those elite prospects. I guess for the position as a whole here, Marcus, so many teams need offense. It's a position like you can't have too much offensive line. So is this the part of the draft where teams start to panic, where offensive line is going to become more pronounced? Like this feels like that moment. You've got so many cool wide receivers, skill position talent. You've got quarterbacks, and now it feels like you start to settle into what feels like more of a normal draft.
And remember, Miami has a bunch of picks in this draft. So if they want to save their day 2 and day 3 picks to address defense, I think they can do that. Offensive tackles just go so early, as evidenced from Austin Jackson last year. You've got a bunch of teams after the Dolphins here that all need left tackles between the Indianapolis Colts. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're better off grabbing Cosme here and then seeing what's available on the other side of the ball in round 2.
All right, number 19, Washington. Just Washington, the football team. Hopefully they never change it. Great young defense. Quarterbacks, they're trying to figure it out. Offensively, they have some players in place. There's actually a nice foundation. I think this is another really intriguing pick when you look at the NFC East and the team just trying to get to that next level. So what do you have here?
I really hope this pick doesn't happen, because this would be a pain in my Cowboys side for a long time. But that's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker / safety from Notre Dame. He's probably, 210 pounds soaking wet, but somebody who can absolutely fly to the football. And if you're putting him behind that monstrous defensive line and just allowing him to clean up everything in the second level, of the field, he's going to thrive there. So I think if he is available to Washington at 19, that's an easy pick for him.
This guy is awesome. This guy is
Yes.
really fun. A guy that has not gotten enough love in a year of the quarterbacks. I think it would be an interesting fit, but Marcus, I am curious. Again, the defense looks like it's in pretty good. This would be an amazing addition, especially when you talk about a great defensive line. I like your term cleaning up, but offensively here, were you tempted at all to go some other place with this pick? Because offense, of course, is going to be the fixation for the Washington fans saying, hey, we just need people to help us score points.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is where I would have leaned, but you look at like Ron Rivera's history as a head coach and where they've gone on defense. Adam, they've actually have some experience taking this type of player before. We saw Thomas Davis coming out of school was one of these hybrid linebacker safeties. We saw Shaq Thompson coming out of school not too long ago, was a first-round pick by the Panthers. Another one of these hybrid guys. I just think Ron Rivera wants speed on his defense, and this is just too unique and too good of a player to pass up.
Well, I think certainly you want to. That defense sounds terrifying. For one, it already is terrifying, but I think and also a great pick for the player. You talk about landing into an ideal spot. My goodness.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay, Chicago Bears. Pace, Nagy, run this thing back. The red rifle. I mean, it doesn't sound very sexy, but how many more of these is Pace going to have? This may be it. So the Bears at 20, the team that has a lot and still feels like it needs a lot. It's a strange one here. So what are you going with?
Chicago has to make a move for a quarterback in this draft. They just can't sit at 20 and pick somebody here. I know I've got him taking Tevin Jenkins, an offensive tackle from Oklahoma State, a dominant run blocking, mauling offensive tackle. But you can't do that if you're the Bears, right? You've got to make some kind of move to go get, I don't even care if it's Mac Jones or whoever. You just can't sit here at 20. Again, I've got them drafting Jenkins. I would be shocked if they stay here and pick.
So you think ultimately that Mac Jones, and I think
they've got to, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, if they don't and they just pick an offensive lineman here, those guys aren't going to have jobs at this time next year. They're just not. It's just the truth. They've got to be aggressive. Go get a quarterback to give yourself a chance.
I think it'll be fascinating to see how far they would come up, where they'd have to go up to potentially get a guy. And depending on that, who they target. Is Mac Jones the fit? I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that would be the best fit. I think Lance would be a lot of fun potentially with this offense, but if that's where you're having a mock, that's going to cost a fortune. It may not even be doable from that standpoint. Okay, and then the last one for part 2 of the mock, and again, we'll finish part 3 next week. The Indianapolis Colts, again, a team with a really interesting foundation. Carson Wentz is in defensively, played some really good games last year, have a great looking young running back in Jonathan Taylor as long as he hangs onto the ball. So what are you doing here?
Yeah, they need a left tackle. Anthony Costanzo retired this offseason. They really didn't do anything to address their offensive line need in free agency. We've seen a bunch of tackles already go off the board. My next highest rated offensive tackle is Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. He's a 3-year starter, played really well on the left side over the last 2 years, a 2-time All-American. Doesn't have the best feet in the world, doesn't have the longest arms. It's just kind of ugly, Adam, but he gets the job done. And I think that kind of fits into that culture of the Indianapolis Colts. You pair him back with Quentin Nelson, a teammate of his from Notre Dame. He's somebody who can dominate in the run game. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but when you need an offensive tackle, sometimes you have to reach.
I don't know if there's a better, when you look at this teams that we went through from 11 to 21, there's a better positional, they have to take this position than
they have to.
The Colts, because protecting Wentz, which was a disaster in Philly, they have had injuries and age and whatever. And then of course, supporting that running game, which is going to be that's going to be their future. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a star. So I think that's a natural fit.